So we have some really awesome speakers. Just for some housekeeping rules I wanted to go over, just housekeeping items. The Q&A feature, we love using that. I love hearing your guys' thoughts on everything. So as we go, if you hear an interesting take or you have a specific question, make sure to just toss it in the chat, and I'll try to get through as many of them as I can as we're speaking. If we don't go through them in real time, I'll also leave some time at the end, hopefully, so we can go through those Q&A questions as well. And just keep up the respectful dialogue, and make sure to take some notes as well. I think you're going to get a lot of really interesting things out of this. So again, the theme is every dollar you spend is a vote. And we want to really emphasize how conscious consumerism and strategic boycotts can really reshape markets. We've seen that with Starbucks, for example, over the past year. Wasn't until the very end, I'd say over the past several months, where articles are finally starting to come out referring to the boycotts as one of the reasons we've seen difficulties with Starbucks. So your dollar really does have an impact. The geopolitical and economic trends that make for this conversation that are urgent, obviously, what's happening in Gaza, the occupied Palestinian territories in general, and all around the world. Sudan and so many other places, we really want to focus on ethical supply chains. And yeah, so we're just going to get right into it. We're going to start off, and I'm going to quickly highlight these speakers for you guys, just so you know about these amazing people before we get started. So let me just quickly pull up their bios, because I have been so impressed just reading about them recently. So Adil Abu Dullah, please, is that how you pronounce your last name? If you could just repeat it for me.
Yeah, that's good enough. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, he's the founder of Boycat. It's a values-driven shopping platform, and it focuses on aligning their purposes with purchases with causes they care about, especially when it comes to Palestine. Since launching in January of 2024, Boycat has directed over $250 million. That's amazing. From unethical brands supporting the occupation to building a new ethical economy through gamified marketplace and alternative brand ecosystem. $250 million. That's incredible. With no formal coding background, Adil has taught himself to code in just 1 month to launch Boycat, now used by millions of people across the world. His journey includes ventures in fashion, tutoring, media, as well as roles in data science and product management, including work with brands like Audi. He now leads Boycat's growth hands-on product, marketing, and development. Adil has spoken on global stages in London, San Francisco, Doha, and Kuwait, where he advocates for purpose-driven innovation and ethical consumer power. Adil, thanks so much for being here today. Alex Screven is the founder of Boon Digital Solutions, a purpose-driven digital studio to empower businesses and nonprofits to adapt ethical, values-aligned technology solutions. After nearly a decade as a senior developer at leading firms like Booz Allen Hamilton and Accenture Federal, Alex channeled her expertise in building high-performance systems into a new mission, merging technical innovation with a fierce commitment to justice and liberation. Boon Digital Solutions was born from Alex's desire to bridge her corporate tech experience with her grassroots activism. Today, she creates tools to help organizations amplify their impact while remaining true to their values. Beyond her work at Boon Digital Solutions, Alex organizes with anti-war and social justice movements in Washington, D.C., advocating for systemic change rooted in equity and collective action. Alex, so great to have you here today. What a beautiful background, and how you've been able to use your skill set to create ethical change. That's amazing. Ahmed Naviwala is transitioned out of a 12-year career in accounting and finance in April of 2024, just last year, to pursue a path aligned with his values, one that ultimately led to the creation of Huraya, his clean ingredients deodorant brand. Combining entrepreneurial drive with a commitment to ethical consumerism, Ahmed sets out to build a business that deepens economic resistance in the United States and contributes to a broader effort for justice in Gaza by challenging the influence of Zionism in American marketplaces. Ahmed is currently focused on launching Horaya and building it into a model for principled, mission-driven brands. Outside of his work, he volunteers on Capitol Hill with advocacy groups like Code Pink, enjoys raising his 6-year-old, spends time doing outdoor activities, and values meaningful time with his friends and community. I mean, it's so great to have you on today. I'm so excited to speak with you. What a great background, and really excited to hear about your new company.
Thank you.
And finally, Wally Rashid, which is me. I don't really need to read my own bio for you guys. I'm Molly Rashid. You might have seen me on social media. I'm pretty active on TikTok, Instagram, starting up my YouTube, and I do a lot of news content, investigative journalism. I've started doing that over the past month and a half. I'm a Palestinian American with family in the West Bank, and they've dealt with settler violence very badly. My family's next to one of the most violent settlements in the West Bank called Yitzhar. So last year during the Biden administration, I was working with a team of lawyers on sanctioning some of those violent settlers. And since there, my platform has really expanded. And now I talk about geopolitics, war in general, and just kind of global affairs. Really excited for you guys all to be here today. And I'm really excited to get going. So let's just get right into it. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes with each speaker, and we're just going to talk about their amazing efforts. So without further ado, Adil, if you want to start off, if you could just tell us a little bit about Boycat, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm also honored to be alongside Alex and Amir. So it'll be really fun. Hopefully it's a really fun conversation too. But Boycat, as its whole, in the most simple way, it's one of my favorite, if not, what I think is the best boycotting tool. Basically, what we want to do is help people figure out how to spend their money. And we do that in the most fun way possible, which is with cats. We tell you what not to buy and what to buy, and we show you the reasons why you should avoid it, the alternatives you can get, and so on from there. But I think at a deeper level, which is more interesting, is that it's kind of an infrastructure product. And so we start at an individual level of how can an individual help out those in Philistine from anywhere around the globe. And that's simply just how you spend your money. The second part is a community level. So once you know how to do it, can you and the community around you collectively unite and figure out how to spend your money in the right way? And then at an infrastructure level, can we create the new alternatives so we don't have to rely on these, Zionist companies and Zionist supporting companies and create our own, basically. That's kind of what Boycat is as a whole, where it's, can we empower someone to speak the language of money so they can have a voice with these corporations and governments? And some really cool features like in Boycat and kind of how it works right now is obviously there's the scanning of products and searching of products, but it goes a little bit deeper where we want to provide the story behind things like the news, the information regarding things, a tiering system. And to do that, we had to create like the first ever partnership with the BDS movement so we could get authority and really have a strategic approach towards this boycott. But then we also once you know what to avoid, it's hard to avoid things unless you have an alternative. So we want to platform as many alternatives as possible. So whether that's brands, whether that's products, whether that's services, whatever it is, we have a bunch of tools on our website and within the application that lets you find localized alternatives, provide information so you can help people out and kind of go in that direction. But I think the really cool part is really about the tracking aspect. So we want to make you feel empowered and make you feel like you're not alone. Because, if you quote unquote boycott like $500 a month, like that doesn't feel like you're doing much. But collectively, we're able to track and find communities in different areas and countries that can unite, and you can track the amount you've divested, quote unquote, within the application as well too. And I think that's one of the coolest parts about it. But yeah, that's kind of a little bit about Boycat.
That's amazing. Thanks for sharing that. And I just want to quickly go over your impact to date because it's pretty remarkable. You redirected $250 million since January of 2024, just a little bit over a year. Can you explain a little bit about how you're tracking that and how you were able to do that?
Yeah, so a bit of a nerding out section, but I love my background is a little bit in data science, so I love figuring out how people do things and kind of their behaviors. So there's a couple of things that go into this tracking aspect of things. We track scans, searches, and so on from there. We also launch qualitative surveys to figure out the pre-post information. So basically, when I give you information, does your behavior change after the information happens? What we're kind of building out in the future is integrations into bank accounts and credit cards and stuff, so we can actually get accurate data. But for now, we just rely on the users to submit information at randomized times of saying, hey, we used to buy it this amount of times, now we're buying it this amount of times. This is the average price in our local area. And just, collectively get a ton of data from everyone. And then we can showcase this is our floor of how much we've at least divested. Because once you scan something, once you search something, your behavior changes. So sometimes you might not have to ever scan that product again or that brand again. So we know at the very, very least, we've done 250 million, but it could be a couple X more than that. We just don't want to report that without being accurate.
Absolutely. And how do you measure? There's so many different brands and companies out there. So are you manually getting that information or are you using AI? How does Boycat measure corporate alignment?
Yeah, so we have a tiering system that we created with the BDS movement that categorizes companies in 3 different levels. there's technically a fourth level, but that's like the minimum threshold level. But what we do is we do a bunch of things. We scrape all the executive information. We look at financials, we look at public statements, we look at any donations from the companies or executives. We rely a lot on crowdsourcing. So I think the power and the beauty of Boycat as a whole is that it's a community-run platform, whether it's information about products or information about companies and brands, or even alternatives. We just rely on users to submit information and sources. So we verify everything properly as well too. But we kind of go into every aspect, not just consumer products and like retail products, but going into even that question in the audience that I'm going to tap into. But we do look into banks and corporations as well. But we do rely on users to submit a lot of information regarding the smaller niche brands as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And I have some questions, but we'll get to the next speaker and I'll save those for the end. Thanks so much, Adil. Our next speaker is Alex Screven. Screven, thanks so much for speaking today. If you could just give us a quick overview on what Boon is, and we'll just go from there.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be here. So Boon is a new digital studio. With my experience in the software industry, it's such a mess, tech overall right now, and caring so deeply about what we're seeing unfold every day, as well as like knowing the power of boycotts, knowing that going to work, continuing aiding and abetting those systems, like there's nothing I can do in my free time that kind of offsets that, and wanting to create alternatives. For me, starting off, it seemed like Wix, getting people off of Wix would be a good place to start, since I do have the software experience. So that's kind of what I've been focusing on right now. And really, like, the point of that, as like the BDS movement says, as it just said, is like kind of having the economic power behind it, as we saw work in South Africa, as well as the data security. And I think just like being a part of the activist community here, there is so much creativity and stuff, and watching friends get doxxed and things, like I really hope to expand Boon in the future, so that way like more people can come in and it can be a safe working environment that we can all like work together to create technical solutions that are ethical and don't end up murdering people around the world, and instead like help focus on liberation. So
Absolutely. And no, thanks so much for sharing that. And just I see some people asking in the chat, and I'm curious too. Can you explain what is Wix and why is it important to try to transition companies and individuals off of that?
So Wix is a Zionist-owned, like kind of no-code solution for getting a website up quickly. It is one of the organic targets of the BDS official campaign, which is why it seemed like the natural first place to start, because I want to listen to what the Palestinians are saying and what they want us to target. And really, like, although there's the convenience there, when we create companies to try to like keep our own communities healthy, when we're like then giving them money to ruin said communities, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So yeah.
Awesome, wonderful. And yeah, the focus there on building ethical digital experiences is really important in transitioning them. Have you found any companies, any alternatives to Wix that you think are suitable for these businesses and individuals?
Yes. So right now, at first I was thinking about just doing custom code, but I don't think that that's going to be a scalable solution at all. So trying to get, I've been using WordPress recently, and just trying to like play around with some of the existing tools that are already there, and creating themes that like kind of we can mass move people off in a really easy way, because right now Wix makes it really, really difficult to move off of their website.
Absolutely. I'm a business owner myself. However, I have an online marketplace. I'm using Shopify, which is also Zionist owned as well. But one of the where I'm hoping to transition in the next 6 months. But again, it's very, very difficult, especially when you have a very large store with a lot of different SKUs and different products. So it's a long-term shift that we're currently working on, which is why I think a company like yours and your efforts are going to be really impactful, because that's millions, if not billions, of dollars in the economy that goes to these websites over time. So thanks so much for sharing that. I see we have some questions in the chat, and then I also have been taking notes on a piece of paper here, so I'm going to get to Alex as well with some more questions towards the end. Any final takeaways though before we transition, Alex?
That's really just about it for right now. We can ask.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And Ahmed, thanks so much for joining today. If you could tell us a little bit about what you're working on and you know what it is, and we can kind of go from there.
Yeah, sure. Assalamu alaikum, guys. Eid Mubarak, belated Eid Mubarak. I hope everyone had a very relaxing Eid. I'm sure as we tracked the Madeline events last night, it made Eid a little more on edge for us. But I wanted to bring up the Madeline because I think the Freedom Flotilla has some lessons we can learn that are that translate really well to what we're doing as boycott brands and launching these big, expensive boycott brands. I really loved how the Madeline had a very clear mission that they communicated well to the general public and built a very nice broad base of support. I also really liked how the activists on that boat had this high level of persistence to their mission, even though they weren't able to project or quantify their outcome. And I think that's a very important thing to keep in mind as we launch these boycott brands in the United States. So I'm Amr Naviwala, founder of Huria. I founded and incorporated back in September 2024. Keep in mind, I have not launched yet. It takes time, and just keep in mind that I'm going to translate or communicate the lessons I've learned thus far. So I'm basically the idea I founded with was to be a boycott brand to deepen the boycotts. And initially, I thought I could deliver a shock to the system and deepen boycotts commercially, and help slow the genocide. That was my founding premise. I quickly learned that the United States keeps funding genocide with our tax dollars, billions of dollars with it, and we can't really slow genocide with a boycott very immediately, per se. But one thing I think is a very, very tangible goal we should be working on is shifting control in the marketplace. I feel the marketplace is very Zionist controlled, and if you look at a lot of the brands that you shop for and use at Target or Walmart, wherever, they all roll up into the same few owners and conglomerates. And I think that's a major problem because those conglomerates have a very strong basis or ties to Zionism and Israel. Very, very concrete ones that if you look them up, you'll see very clearly. So my thing was shifting control. The other important aspect of shifting control of the marketplace is a lot of our activism seems to be hampered by the idea that what is our employer going to do to us if we speak up? And there's so much fear around it. I feel like we could blow the lid and really have a much more intense, outspoken activism, even in the professional realm, like on LinkedIn and whatnot. If people knew that my employer supports anti-Zionism, anti-colonialism, anti-genocide, and that's the common way of. Go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no, I just wanted to let you know we're at the halfway point. Just
okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So I think shifting control is a big thing. In terms of my strategy, my strategy is I believe in order to do this, it's such a big goal to try to replace demand from big conglomerates to ourselves. So each brand owner, I think, should take a very concrete, clear strategy and try to nail one or two hero products and not try to go too broad. Initially, I had started with a broad array of products and categories. I have narrowed down to clean ingredients deodorant. I want to aim at the demand of brands like Native Brand. So I'm currently working with a large manufacturer that outputs millions of sticks of natural deodorant a year, and try to swipe demand from a Native Brand. I think that's a very tangible target. The idea is to tie our success with sales volume, and to sell at volume and low profit margins, because the idea is to steal market share. It's not to gain the maximum profitability initially on each product. Because I believe that shifting market share equals control for us. And so that's my initial approach right now. It is taking time because US manufacturers are very slow. Initially, I tried to work with Turkish manufacturers and Chinese manufacturers, but with the tariff situation, economic situation, I had to quickly shut that down, and it forced me into just working with US manufacturers. But that has been a blessing in disguise because it's caused me to focus and invest more hardcore into one product type, and that is with US manufacturers. For those of you who might be thinking of starting boycott brands, I think it's very important to, if you want to save time, it's very time consuming to look for a manufacturer. So I'd recommend, and vet their samples and whatnot, I'd recommend jumping straight to US manufacturers for now. I know that's very specific advice, but that's what I've learned. And look for pay top dollar if you find a quality sample and a top sample and an excellent R&D department. Go ahead and make that leap. Otherwise, you'll waste more time trying to find cheaper alternatives, cheaper production, because you're probably not going to be able to find it very easily. The other thing is, I think we need to integrate really well. Okay, is my time
No,
up?
go ahead and finish your sentence and we'll go on.
Oh, yeah. I think Wally's going to lead into this with his question is, I think we need to be integrating really well with the tech side. And I'm very happy that Tech for Palestine is leading this initiative of this panel, because I think a lot of our selling solutions and advertising vehicles and solutions will come from the tech people. And I'll finish right there.
No, absolutely. And yes, you're correct. We're gonna transition to Q&A now. I have some questions for each speaker, and if we have time, I'm gonna share my thoughts as well. But I want to make sure we get through these questions first. Adil, thanks so much for sharing. When it comes to Boycat, what's one misconception people have for boycotts, and how does Boycat fix that? And then I do have a second follow-up question related to the funding for Boycat and how that's worked as well. But if we can start off with a misconception people had and how you noticed Boycat fix that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, that's a hard one because there's so many. But I think I'm gonna do two really short ones, and then we can combine them into one. The first is like, I guess it's kind of the question of like, one cup doesn't matter. Like, does it really matter if one person avoids one single cup? And then the second is boycotting is the end all be all, I think, is kind of what people think it is. Because in my opinion, it's a long-term play, it's not a short-term play. Like, we're not going to see results overnight, and it's something that we have to change into like a lifestyle aspect, where then you see these changes in the long run, because that's when you gather data of like, avoiding and redirecting of funds, and you can go to companies and, flip their stance on different issues, especially with Palestine, which is kind of our goal is like, over the course of a year, can we go to like Starbucks and be like, look, you lost this amount of money. We've tracked this amount of stuff from our users. So now imagine if you end up supporting Palestine and then, we don't have to boycott you anymore and so on from there and go in that direction. Because our goal is to wreck these companies fully. It's to make them pick the right option and choose the right thing and stand with humanity, right? So I think that's one of the main misconceptions. And like individually, like, yeah, individually you may not have the largest impact, but collectively as together, it's like everyone plays their part. We do have, the ability to create that change.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you. And I want to make sure we get through everybody. So I'll have some questions at the end. Alex, thanks so much for sharing. I think what you're doing is great. You previously mentioned that, so you're currently working on transferring companies that use Wix and Elementor, which are Zionist-owned companies, off of those. And you're currently looking for potential solutions of where they can migrate to. You mentioned that initially you've been testing out coding and creating some personal things, but obviously that's very difficult when it comes to scaling. So aside from that, what challenges have you faced? And if you could talk a little bit about the potential solutions you've been coming up with. You mentioned WordPress being one. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's so many different requirements in every website, and trying to recreate sites pixel by pixel isn't necessarily the most scalable thing, which is why WordPress seemed like a more natural option, because I did see someone ask about Squarespace, but with WordPress, it is open source. So I'm able to self-host down the road. Right now, I'm working with Automatic, which has their servers are in the EU, so there is a little bit more data protection there. And just like kind of full control, I can move people off into another hosting provider at any point in time, which I really like, as well as being able to develop plugins. So if somebody has a specific requirement, I'm able to make something that meets their specific requirement and then add that plugin to other people's sites down the road, which will help the business hopefully be more scalable in the future, because right now it's very much like website by website, but wanting to pick up the speed on that a little bit.
Absolutely.
Or need to pick up the speed on that a little bit. If
Absolutely. What I've noticed is once you start having the balls rolling and making things effective one at a time, then naturally over time the solutions kind of show themselves. So great work. And Ahmed, you what do you expect? Do you have any ideas of challenges that you expect to happen once you begin selling?
Yeah, definitely. Before the session, I was talking to Adil from Boycat, and I was asking him about do you ever suspect that you could be shut down as an app at the source? So say we're being suppressed on Instagram in terms of our advertising and outreach. What if, and then we move to Boycat, can that be shut down? So I think a big in general thing is looking where the puck is going and looking at developing, what do you call it? Like selling platform and advertising vehicle solutions ahead of time and starting now. We should anticipate challenges now and then start building out for the future. And I think that's obviously a very iterative process and complex process. And I think the business side and the seller should be really professionally and informally networking and conversing with the tech people, I think, very constantly and frequently, so that we can always stay ahead of the game mentally.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I have some funding questions too for all of you guys actually, which but we're going to transition to funding right now, so it works out perfectly. We're going to be talking about the growth and investment challenges, because their initiatives and what they're doing, all three of these individuals, is amazing and very noble. But then there's some real challenges in the real world, especially when it comes to funding and making sure that the business can actually operate in the long term. So we're going to spend 5 minutes each really discussing this. So I want to start off with the early stage. Oh, sorry about that, guys. I want to start off with the early stage funding realities, and we're going to go through each speaker. So what has the fundraising landscape, if you fundraise, and if you haven't, then please share a little bit about if you're just working on this without pay and what you're doing. But what has the fundraising landscape been like for explicitly cause-driven businesses? Added, if we can start with you talking about the challenges, how Boycat is self-sufficient, that would be great.
It's self-sufficient with my bank account. That's my savings account's literally draining. But the fundraising has been brutal. I think I knew this going in, like 99% of VCs around the world, just, they're all Zionist back. So it's like, you're not going to get support from them. And the 1% that are either like pro-humanity or like Muslim or in that space, they're like, we love you, we support you. Someone has to do it, but we can't touch you because either they're LPs or someone's related to some sort of Zionist thing. So we've been relying a lot on angel checks, and that's kind of been like the main way of going about it. But then it was a moment of like, it's hard to even do that because now with the new Trump laws in this past year, a couple of our angels have pulled out because they're like, either they're on visa or a green card or their spouses are on the same thing. And they're kind of worried about getting deported. So they're like, we want to support you, we just can't. So it's been a really hard way of doing that. And it's hard to convince some people to invest in us because they're kind of worried that it'll just fail or the social thing. It's not a traditional VC business where they can 100x their money or investment in like the first year. But we've been validated enough because I don't know how many of you've maybe seen this, but we got a couple offer letters from Israel to buy us out a couple of times. And I had a lawyer look into it in February properly. And the offer letter was like 8 figures plus just to get acquired and shut down basically. And the fact that they know that, we're valued at a certain amount where we're doing enough damage to their system that they want to like, shut us down is more telling. And it's kind of sad that our community won't support us in that way. So what we've been trying to do is really just like build out the actual product aspect so we can convince people that when you do choose a social or impact business, you're not losing out on money. It's like, it's there, you can do it, but you can also like be a change maker in the world. So we have like our B2C aspect of things of like memberships, we'll offer new features for users in the application. But we also have like the B2B side where it's like, ads, affiliates, our certification we launched for clean businesses. And what's really cool is because I was telling, our friends here in a bit, I'll finish my thought and we'll call it for this part. But but we have insight into what alternatives need to be built. And so what we want to do is build one ourselves and help platform the rest of them out there, and just get affiliate aspect from there.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And I saw some questions in the chat and I have some as well, but we'll make sure to get through each speaker first. Alex, love what you're doing. Again, the same thing. What's the fundraising landscape been like? And are you is your business service some sort of service model where these companies reach out to you because they want to transition and you provide it as a service? How does that work for you?
So right now it's a lot of R&D, and then I'll do little consulting things on the side. And definitely dipping into savings quite a bit. But it felt like the only right thing to do given the circumstances. So leased out my condo and moved into a really small place to try to like make it as sustainable as possible for as long as possible and kind of go all in. But until I find a way to make it fully scalable, like not really at that fundraising stage yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, thanks so much. And it just kind of goes to show how much our speakers are really just dedicated to the cause and doing this out of the good of their heart. And hopefully, especially with the environment that we've been able to nurture, the pro-Palestine environment, Tech for Palestine especially, has done such a good job networking and connecting people as well, which is just wonderful. And Ahmed, you're also similar to Alex, where you're both kind of just starting off and doing a lot of R&D and really start, in the early phases of your business. So if you could share any of that, is it just self-funding? Have you considered the fundraising? And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I kind of am very scared of, I've heard lots of horror stories about partnerships and whatnot. And then I'm also afraid of too much control over my business. So I have actually self-funded. The good thing is I've been fortunate and I have a very colorful answer on this that I could delve into more maybe some other time or one-on-one. But I had like a inheritance I got or like something that contributed to my retirement savings. Now I took out of that and I'm taking my capital out of that to seed the inventory purchases. It is a large amount. I'm risking a lot of my retirement funds. One thing I made sure was I did not put it into, I put most of it into brokerage instead of locking it in retirement accounts like 401ks and whatnot, IRAs. I think that's important for people to keep in mind. If you think you're going to start a business, put it in brokerage, put it in something liquid that you can take out. But I'm basically tapping into my retirement funds.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that. And that's the next question I have, and I'm gonna alter it a little bit, just given that we have some early stage businesses as well. I think the elephant in the room that a lot of people also aren't talking about is the current U.S. administration. There's Abdul, you lightly mentioned how you've had some people pull out because they're concerned about deportations and whatnot, and there has been a huge crackdown on BDS initiatives in general. So I'm gonna go through each speaker and ask you guys, has that been a concern with your business, and how did you politically navigate that, or what? And if you are still kind of figuring that out, if you could just share a little bit about your thought process and how you're kind of handling that. So we'll start off with Abdul, if you could just share a little bit about that.
Yeah, a lot of it is really about positioning and branding. Like you can achieve the same goal if you position in the right way. And so what we've been trying to do is make it as fun and clean as possible and really push the agenda of like pro-ethical shopping versus like we're anti-anything. And that helps us fly under the radar for the most part.
Absolutely. Awesome. And you mentioned that you've had some investors pull out. Is that how impactful has that been to your business operations?
I mean, it was a couple $100,000 that we just basically lost out and we're trying to recuperate somehow. So it's pretty bad, but we'll figure it out. That's just what we have to do.
Appreciate it. Thanks for sharing that. And yeah, Alex, the same question to you. You're a bit earlier stage, and but has that been a concern, and what's been your thoughts on that?
I mean, I've definitely lost sleep about that question at night and been talking to other people about that. But I mean, at the end of the day, it just seems like the right thing to do and really insane if like genocide isn't something that's punished, but then boycotting it is, and just kind of powering on ahead with it. I was yeah, just kind of powering on ahead and hoping that it doesn't get to that. But if it does, I have a lot of friends who are lawyers, so I guess we'll deal with that situation then.
Absolutely. No, thanks for being so candid and sharing that. And Amit, if we could just go to you as well with the efforts that you're working on.
Mhm. Yeah, so like Adil, I've spent many months obsessing and worrying about will I get shut down and how will I get shut down and will my social media advertising get suppressed? One thing I've done is first experimented on my personal account by doing a lot of social media posting and kind of testing the waters and algorithm because I'm most worried about as a consumer products brand, how will I advertise on social media? Because it would be like TikTok and Instagram, right? So I've been testing out. I think I have a lot more data to gather in terms of like ways they could shut us down. But I think one interesting thing to do would be to start looking at platforms like Boycat, where it already attracts the right people, and it would make our ad spend much more effective rather than reaching out to a wide crowd all on social media and betting it all on social media. Where I think we're already seeing suppression, but I think it's still to be gauged whether they're just changing the algorithm to like filter out what's not engaging or whether we're really being suppressed. But you can probably already see a lot of online activists, complaining that they're being suppressed. So I guess we still have to gather data on like how real is that suppression online.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that.
Can I
And
follow up my
yeah,
question really fast? I'm sorry.
no, absolutely, please.
So when I was like incorporating, I was talking to a mentor about it, and they had me file as a C Corp in Wyoming, for the security that gives, as well as like personal protection, and that like if it's a C Corp, I guess it's a lot easier just to like unincorporate and then reincorporate. So anyone who's currently looking into starting their own boycott brand might want to consider following suit. This is the first time I've opened a business, so I was just kind of following what someone who has opened many was recommending to me, but have been happy with that choice so far.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. We do have some we're going to also have a 15-minute Q&A as well, but let me quickly go through the chat because I saw some pretty interesting questions I want to go over. How do you bypass censorship, especially as US-based initiatives using social media that are very pro-Israel? Abdul, if I can actually have you answer that question, because I think it would be pretty pertinent to your current work with Boycat.
It goes back to branding. That's really all it is. It's like we position in a way that you get the message without being so blunt about it. Because we're gonna get censored either way, and we already are for the most part. But it's just a matter of can you suppress it by being as smart as possible with like the language you choose and the branding you choose, and so on from there.
Absolutely. And I see another question in here by Jihan. I'm curious to see if there are any initiatives done by pro-Palestinian incubators that would allow these initiatives to prosper and get more funding. Jihan, I can answer that question actually. We actually did an entire webinar about this in the last webinar, so I would definitely suggest you check it out. Sadia Miriam, I'm not sure if the link is on the tech for the previous live recording is there, but we actually had some Palestinian incubators previously talk about that, and specifically mainly incubators for Palestinians in the occupied territories. But there is definitely some work being done to kind of nurture that environment and help early startups receive funding with in those efforts. So yeah, we'll make sure to get you the link as well before we end. And let me quickly just go through. Okay, Ahmed, what is your website address? I see you already provided that. Awesome. So wonderful. So now we're gonna go to the next part, and I think Abdul, this would be perfect for you to actually answer because you've already been working with investors and you've went about that. How do you convince an investor that intentional spending and economic resistance is a solid return on investment?
We know that ESG as a system is already like a $100 billion industry per year. And so we can just position ourselves in a very similar manner of like, yeah, you can care about the environment, but you can also care about humans. And so that tends to work pretty well so far. Yeah.
Absolutely. And somebody asked previously, what percent of your users actually end up purchasing the membership?
It's pretty low because we don't push it super hard yet because we don't have an offering technically. We really just give them a badge and some support and so on from there. But once we add in some AI shopping features and like, I guess a sneak peek for everyone in the webinar is we're adding in nutrition data very soon. So kind of like Yuka, but in a way that when you do shop and scan things, there's more features for members. So we can convince them to get it along with the benefit of supporting us as a whole. So we need to improve that conversion rate for sure.
Okay, and has the definitely makes sense. And has the membership contributed a lot to your business's current day-to-day functions when it comes to the amount of investment when it comes to your cash flow? Is that a large part yet, or are you primarily using investor funds to operate?
It's still not enough to a point where we even break even. Like it's pretty low, surprisingly, and it's very dependent and correlates to how much press I get in a sense. So if I'm on a podcast, it does better and we get a couple more members and so on from there. So we're going to try making it more of like a product reliant on membership versus reliant on me and being in the public eye.
Awesome. Appreciate it. And wonderful. And we're going to go ahead and go to the Q&A session next. We have 15 minutes remaining. If we finish early or go a little bit over time, that's completely fine. I have some questions on a piece of paper here as well. But right now would be the perfect time, everybody. If you have some questions, just to toss it in the Q&A, that would be great. While we're waiting for those Q&A questions to come in, I did want to ask, and again, thank you so much, speakers, for just coming on here today. Wonderful background and stories. When it comes to Alex, with what you're doing with Boon Digital Solutions, really awesome work. So is a lot of the efforts that you do currently is a lot of your day-to-day work, the coding aspect, or what takes up most of your time with Boon Digital Solutions? What is the main challenge and what are you primarily working on a day-to-day?
Transferring the sites, trying to figure out like exactly what different options are, since I won't be doing self-coding, looking into like how to actually like make it a scalable thing. Then if there's like consulting things that pop up or somebody wants like a redesign in the process, looking into that a little bit. But yeah, kind of a lot of here and there trying to play a bunch of different hats at once right now.
Absolutely. And have you noticed, can it be any company that has a website? Or for example, like I said, I run an e-commerce site. It has a lot of different pages. Is e-commerce something that you could also help with when it comes to many different product pages? Or what's your ideal customer been looking like?
I haven't done
your
any
expected. Yeah.
Site yet, but I'm actually really looking forward to hopefully doing one soon and testing out to see getting a few e-commerce sites up on WordPress in the near future.
Awesome. Interesting. And when do you expect Bobcat to launch and estimate costs? Bobcat. Okay. I think that might be a mispronunciation then. And we're gonna go Ahmed. Again, really great work that you're doing. What's the current bottleneck? What's the current challenge you're really actively working on? Again, what's your day-to-day look like? And what's the biggest challenge you're currently facing?
Yeah, so previously I was working with too many SKUs, and so that was like very taxing. It was like more than a full-time load. Now it's just I'm pretty much bottlenecked and stuck with one manufacturer that is a great manufacturer, but they're really slow, long lead times, and I'm a relatively small customer for them. We're currently working on one or two stock formulations with them that I need adjusted and I need tweaked after I've tested them for a long period of time. But the manufacturer is being a little difficult on editing those, and I might have to go a custom formulation route. So they just emailed me this morning. We're like, you're gonna have to go a custom formulation route. So that has a longer timeline. It has an extra expense that they're saying is pretty large. So I'm definitely encountering formulation challenges. And before this, I actually worked with another US manufacturer. I thought I was gonna go with them, but then we couldn't get a certain quality right in the deodorant. And because of that, we kept doing round after round trying to nail that, and it was off. And so I dropped that manufacturer, went with a much bigger one. And so just this idea of switching through manufacturers, trying to nail a formulation, testing it takes time. And then you're always like not fully sure. You're like, okay, this is my opinion, but what do other people think? So eventually I'll have to, once I nail it down, I'll have to order more sticks of that, then have other people test it, give me feedback. So just nailing that hero formula, that hero product that'll scale up and sell big is nerve-wracking and time consuming.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And I actually wanted to share something as well, guys, that I think is really pertinent to this. There's, boycotting individual brands that support the occupation is a great effort. It's, resistance with your dollar. And there's also the very real thing that business owners need to consider, which is, I'm going to touch a little bit about it, but if you're a business owner and you purchase raw materials or you purchase any sort of product, you have to also worry about where you're getting the products that you need to make your product. And here's a really good example. I don't know if you guys have heard of Hims and Hers. They're the supplement company. They also sell some medication. They sell Viagra. This is a great example, and I actually know the CEO of Hims and Hers pretty well. The CEO of Hims and Hers is a Palestinian. He's a Palestinian American, and he started up the company that's now valued, if not in the billions now. And what they do is they provide supplements and medication. However, Viagra is primarily supplied by Teva Pharmaceuticals, and Teva Pharmaceuticals is an Israeli Zionist-owned company, and they sell the majority of the world's Viagra. Not just Viagra. If you start to look at the medications you receive, you'll notice that a lot of the times the manufacturer is Teva Pharmaceuticals. So in a situation like that, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, sometimes you legitimately don't have other options. When it comes to Viagra, you legitimately do not have other options until maybe a generic is finally allowed and a generic is rolled out, and then you might consider that. But with pharmaceuticals, even when you do have another option, you have to give somebody who needs medication. It could be a $10 for the Zionist brand versus $550 for the non-Zionist brand. This is unfortunately just how it works in those spaces. Pharmaceuticals is one example I'm giving with Hims and Hers, but there's a lot others. In cases like that, I've had people ask me, how can you support Hims and Hers if they're receiving medication from a pharmaceutical manufacturer that is a Zionist-owned company? And this is the thing where some situations are very nuanced. And ultimately, and actually Bella Hadid also has been dealing with this with her perfume company. Ultimately, you want to focus on the long-term goal of changing supply chains in general to stop supporting the occupation. You want to go everything from the retailer all the way to the manufacturer. However, sometimes that's just simply not possible. And what you want to do is you want to be very strategic. And if you are in a situation where you are the retailer themselves and you notice that there are simply no other manufacturers or producers aside from Zionist ones in certain industries like pharmaceutical, as a consumer, as us, you want to think about the long-term goal, which would be eventually, hopefully, to get a non-Zionist manufacturer to begin their company. And you want to ultimately take on these different aspects of the supply chain one-on-one, not with the goal of just doing it all in one bat, but slowly helping nurture the environment for that. Bella Hadid, also another example. She has a perfume brand, and can't remember the name of her perfume brand right now, but she has a perfume brand, and she currently sells it at Ulta. Sephora, unfortunately, is a Zionist-owned company, and Sephora wanted her perfume, Orabella, thank you, Nada. She wanted her perfume in Sephora, but obviously because it's a Zionist-owned company, props to Bella Hadid, she actually didn't end up selling it there, and she ended up forming a partnership with Ulta where now her perfume brand lies. But this is why it's really important to focus on the entire ecosystem as a whole. And sometimes you're not going to be able to transition an entire supply chain to avoid the occupation at once. Unfortunately, that's just not how the world works. So even if we could tackle individual aspects of the supply chain to eventually get to a place where we can change the entire environment, that would be the ultimate goal. So as we focus on maybe targeting retailers, while unfortunately the manufacturers have to be Zionist owned, with the ultimate goal of hopefully somebody young and motivated rises up and says, I want to develop a pharmaceutical manufacturer. And then we can eventually support them and say, oh, well, we have the retailer for you, and we'll be able to connect the two. So it's really a collaborative effort. And with certain situations, we want to focus on the long term and really changing the entire environment. And that's going to be a long-term strategy. This is not something that we can do overnight, unfortunately. But I see a question popping up in the chat. Adil, have you thought of a web browser plugin that routes shoppers to a specific brand from the popular shopping sites, Amazon, Etsy, etc., to an ethical product or alternative? And if not, do you have any R&D things you're currently working on with Boycat?
Yeah, so the first part is it's impossible to get 99% of people off Amazon. It's just too convenient for most people, and like, you have people that care. So we do have a plugin already that started, but we're building in 4 phases. The first phase is just get people on Amazon that are buying stuff to just understand what they're buying. The second step is tell them what not to buy and then show them what alternatives they can buy that are clean on Amazon, because they most likely won't switch. And then once we get to a point where we have enough alternative brands in the system, we can start shipping people off whenever they're buying on Amazon to those alternatives. So it's kind of like in phase. It's right now we're in mid phase of 2 and 3 at the moment, and it's out there already live. It's on our website. And then the last phase we'll create our own distribution fulfillment aspects. So we don't have to ever shop on Amazon again, hopefully.
Appreciate it. Thank you for answering that. And we have 5 minutes remaining, so I'm just gonna, if each speaker can, just share your final thoughts, and we can just kind of go from there. If there are any points that you haven't spoken about yet that you'd like to touch on, that would be great. So, Adil, if we could just start off with you, and then we'll go around.
Oh man, the pressure. I think with Boycat specifically, we want to make sure that we're building the infrastructure for a new economy. We want to make sure that we have a voice and a seat at the table, basically. And so I think for each person, it's important to be like, trust us and allow us to keep building and let us make mistakes as we kind of, build everything out. But the main takeaway, I think, is just like, our goal isn't to like cancel every company in the entire world. Like you mentioned, we want to eventually create infrastructure change, and it's about building what comes next. I think that's the best part. It's like, whether you're like a consumer, a founder, investor, policymaker, a volunteer, whatever it is, like we want to make sure like you have a roadmap of like action. And then from there, it's like, it's part of it's resistance, but the next part is like renewal and restructure and infrastructure. And like, that's what we want to build. So I think that's my last couple words.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And Alex, just closing statements and final thoughts.
Just that I'm really excited to like be able to help in this small way, and all the support that I've seen from the community and encouragement. I really had no idea what I was doing when I first started, but there's so much support for entrepreneurs, especially in this space, that like was like a lot less scary to start than I was expecting, and really encourage anyone who is considering making the dive to go ahead and try, because there's an incredible community waiting.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. And Amit, if you could just, again, final thoughts and closing statements, really touching on the webinar discussion.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to piggyback on your point, Wally. I think it's important for people to note that even when we started our brands, or at least I can speak for myself, I went in with a very purist mindset of like vetting the entire supply chain, even the payment vendors, whatnot, and credit card companies, processing companies. It is very hard to go purist from the get-go. So just be very supportive of anyone who starts with the pro-Palestine or anti-genocide initiative. Be supportive, because once we finally get that billion-dollar CEO or millionaire CEO, whatever it is, that's when we gain traction, leverage, and power. So step by step, we have to conquer the supply chain. So let that person get on their feet as a brand owner. Once they have that demand, they can use that demand as leverage to then sway even the manufacturers. So definitely, a lot of people post comments sometimes on Instagram, wherever, and they can be very harsh. But just go easy and understand that once you dive into the actual thing, it's a lot harder than you think.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. And I think if anybody in business or just well aware of supply chain management can understand, it's a really uphill battle with this sort of stuff. And if we could just get one person focusing on one aspect for another person to eventually focus on another, then over time, we're really going to change the whole ecosystem. And that's how you make your vote, your dollar, much more impactful in the long term. Speakers, thank you guys all so much. If you could please quickly in the chat, just toss in your contact information, how people can find you guys, that would be great. If you have any websites or anything, feel free to toss that in right now. Also, guys, last time, which I really liked for everybody in this chat, if you want to toss your LinkedIn and connect with other people also in this chat, feel free to toss your LinkedIn right now. I know last time a lot of people were connecting and they really enjoyed that. And finally, if you want to hear more about me and you want to watch some of my news content, you can also follow me on social media. My handle is @WallyRashid. I just tossed it in the chat as well, so feel free to shoot me a follow. And thanks so much, everybody, for joining today. Speakers, thank you so much for taking the time. This was a beautiful webinar. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, feel free to hop off, and I'll be here for 30 more seconds. Just keep the live chat a little bit more active. Appreciate it, guys. All right.